The first year that it was in place, I had just been hired, and I didn't know a lot about the bill or the impact that it could have. Was able to do a lot of studying very quick. We got it out of the Senate. The Speaker of the House did not like it and put it in a drawer and killed it without a vote. So that was a big bummer. But you know, I kind of like a challenge. I kind of like a little bit of a fight and being able to take it to folks. And so I had some really good conversations with who was the Speaker of the House at the time. And that following next year, he sponsored it. He was our main driving force on getting it passed. Now, granted, that was kind of a just miniature version, a little step through the gate, so to speak. What that did was it provided these education savings accounts to those most in need right off the get-go. Mom and dad needed a little bit of help to be able to afford those private schools.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. Part of the American dream is having the freedom to pursue the life you want, whether that's starting a business, building a home, or educating your kids, however you want. But in some states, that dream gets tangled up in red tape and feels like the government is standing in the way. Just see my home state of Illinois. But that's not true in every state. Some states are cutting red tape and giving people more freedom and opportunity. And today we're going to talk about one of those states. This is a state that has deep roots in the American West. Rodeos, ranching, and a cowboy way of life still matters. It's also home to some of the most breathtaking scenery in the country. Wide open spaces, massive mountain ranges, and yes, one of the most iconic national parks in the world. Actually, the first national park ever created. Today we're going to break down what the state of Wyoming did this past legislative session to keep that spirit alive. I want to welcome back to the podcast Tyler Lindholm, who is the Americans for Prosperity State Director for Wyoming. Tyler, welcome.
Hey, thanks, David. Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to be back. We've been having a lot of fun out in the Cowboy State.
Yeah, you certainly have. It's been pretty amazing to see so many transformative changes happening that should hopefully benefit, so many residents of Wyoming. I'm really excited. And I think actually, you've been on this show a number of times, but what, listeners probably don't realize is you haven't been a state director for, terribly long. And in fact, there hasn't been a state chapter in Wyoming for terribly long. And yet we're actually getting to a place where really great policy change is happening. So, remind me, how long has there been an AFP with Wyoming chapter?
We're at 2.5 years right now, David. So not very long. You're absolutely right. We kicked the ball on things in January of 2023 when Americans for Prosperity first hired me, and it's been a rodeo from the word go.
That's awesome. Seems appropriate for the Cowboy State.
That's right.
Well, let's first talk about one of my favorite topics: education savings accounts and education freedom expansion. You guys passed an education savings account for students. So, but first go back to what happened last year and then take it forward to this year.
Right. Well, and actually this is kind of a 3-session legislative journey. The first year that it was in place, I had just been hired, and I didn't know a lot about the bill or the impact that it could have. Was able to do a lot of studying very quick. We got it out of the Senate. The Speaker of the House did not like it and put it in a drawer and killed it without a vote. So that was a big bummer. But I kind of like a challenge. I kind of like a little bit of a fight and being able to take it to folks. And so I had some really good conversations with who was the Speaker of the House at the time. And that following next year, he sponsored it. He was our main driving force on getting it passed. Now, granted, that was kind of a just a miniature version, a little step through the gate, so to speak. And what that did was it provided these education savings accounts to those most in need right off the get-go, folks that mom and dad needed a little bit of help to be able to afford those private schools or some type of homeschooling curriculum, what have you. This year, we were able to blow it out of the water, and we got universal. So every parent, every student in the state of Wyoming matters. And that's the message that the Wyoming legislature and governor sent.
Well, it was great too because am I wrong? Did the governor veto part of it last year?
Right? Yeah, he did. Wait, there's a common theme.
Yeah, I know we're going to touch on this.
Yeah, the governor didn't like portions of it last year. Last year's legislation went up to 400% of the federal poverty level would have been covered, and the governor pulled what's called a line item veto. And for those that aren't aware of what that means, it essentially allows the governor just to take pieces out of the legislation that he doesn't like. Now, he can only do that on pieces of legislation that have two or more appropriations to them. Because we were creating the program, we had to put into place an administrator for the program, plus we had to spend for the kids. So two different appropriations, the governor did his deed. And it was a nice turnaround this year. Also, some great coachable conversations were had that made it possible.
So the bill that passed this year is bigger. So it's universal. It covers all students. It really is more of an ideal form from our point of view. And so were there any, kind of take us behind the scenes a little bit? Like, you had some momentum coming off last year because obviously the legislature passed it. Had an obstacle. So how did it kind of get all the way through this time?
Yeah, that's a great question, David, because there was a lot of pushback because we had just passed that legislation the prior year. There was a lot of folks saying, well, let's see how this actually works. Let's play it out. And so our stance was we don't need to see how it's going to play out because we've seen this play out in other states. And then on top of that, at the time, even though with the final piece of legislation from the prior year, we were only allowed up to 150% of the federal poverty level, we were at already 500 applicants within a very short period of time. Since the even impetus of the program starting up, nobody even really knew about it. We were already at 500 applicants. That probably doesn't sound a lot like a lot of people to your average viewer or listener right now, but the Cowboy State is the least populated state in the nation by a wide margin. Some would argue we shouldn't even be a state. I might agree with them, just so we didn't have to pay income taxes. But it was a big barrier to get over, and so one of the things that we utilized when talking to these state senators and state representatives about why this is important and why running the ball on this situation right now is so important has to do with the fact that we've got a lot of momentum from the federal level. President Trump and his administration is very favorable to school choice. So we were excited about that, but also about the opportunity. Look, we've got 500 kids that are under 150% of the federal poverty level that have already applied and are already able to achieve some type of educational success because of your efforts. Imagine what we could do if we didn't put some kind of limited income where the government is deciding who's poor enough. I'm over 150% of the federal poverty level. Me and my wife are, and it's not something that we could have ever afforded. And so this opportunity for your average Wyomingite, it just blows things out of the water, and it really provides an opportunity that has never been seen in the Cowboy State before.
That's fabulous. It's part of a movement across America over the last few years where parents and families are being empowered to make decisions, the education decisions for their kids. And I'm so glad that you guys were able to kind of be part of that, the continuing movement there. So that's the education one. Then we go to kind of fiscal and economic stuff. So let's talk about the REINS Act. First, what is the REINS Act, and what did you guys end up passing?
Sure. Yeah. So the REINS Act stands for Regulations from the Executive in Need of Scrutiny. And where this ideology comes from as far as what should be in place in all 50 states, unfortunately, it's not. Wyoming can count itself as one of the lucky where it is. It comes from the ideology that regulations come about either from state legislation or federal legislation, or some kind of federal push, right? So the regulatory agency that's in charge of that issue has to gin up regulations in that regard. And I'll give a very simple example. In the state of Wyoming, you had to be licensed to braid hair. There's never been a piece of legislation that has gone through the Wyoming legislature that mandated that. That was the regulatory agency unto themselves, just interpreting law and running the ball on it. And that was in place. That's not anymore, thankfully. But just the same, you can apply that same line of thinking to whether it's the Department of Environmental Quality or to the Department of Education on down the line. What the REINS Act does is it allows a state legislature to weigh in on these different pieces of regulation. It allows the legislature to stand up as an individual legislator and cast a vote for or against. Basically, the people of Wyoming now have a voice through their elected representative, someone that was elected by them, that can say yes or no. The real benefit here is they can hold them accountable. The people of Wyoming can hold each and every legislator accountable for each and every regulation. Because if they fail to act on something that is damaging to their community, they should be held accountable. And that's where the REINS Act really shines in this regard.
So you're yourself a former state legislator.
Recovering politician.
Maybe you're a recovering state legislator. We've heard from Eric Bott and other folks, and sometimes there's lawmakers that don't want that accountability. But it seemed like in Wyoming, you had pretty healthy margins to pass this through, right?
We did, yeah. One might even call it veto-proof majority. We really did. There was a lot of momentum behind this legislation because it's a make-sense situation. State legislators are constantly hearing from their constituents, from their voters, saying, hey, X, Y, or Z is really hurting my business or my family. What can you do about it? And before the REINS Act, the most that they could do about it is pick up the phone and call the head of an agency that lives a couple 100 miles away, that doesn't know that community, that has nothing to do with that area, and hope that they can get something fixed through the regulatory change process, which takes months to years to be able to rectify something. Whereas with the REINS Act right now, right here, without a legislative vote of confidence, those regulations are dead.
So this went on to the governor, and he vetoed it.
Yeah.
So what did he say why he vetoed it? And maybe take me, what happened after that?
Yeah. Well, and actually, I will give a big hat tip to Governor Gordon from the Cowboy State. He was very open with me from the word go when that bill was first filed that he did not like it whatsoever. And that's got a lot to do with the fact that the governorship in the state of Wyoming, as far as what powers are allowed, are very limited. In fact, if you compare it across the various states, it's the weakest governor as far as powers are concerned in the United States. I think that's a feature, not a glitch. And he disagreed. And this is one of those areas that he actually had control over. Didn't really want to let that in. My argument is, shoot, Governor, you can veto legislation all day, but where's the check on your powers, on your authority when it comes to regulations? And so we had gone back and forth. He did live up to his promise and vetoed that piece of legislation. And we immediately went to work. Activists, full-time staff, volunteers, everybody with AFP Wyoming immediately jumped into the trenches. Started talking to their legislators, talking to folks at the Capitol about why this is important. And shortly thereafter, we had our override vote, and it passed with just enough votes in the Senate, and then more than enough in the House. So at that point, once it was overridden, sad day for the governor. That sucker's going into law.
Yeah. Well, that's good for the residents of Wyoming.
That's right.
Sorry.
That's right.
That's a big win in the regulatory and fiscal space for the state of Wyoming. Like a really big win, actually. We definitely call that a transformative win. Now we move over to healthcare. Mm-hmm. So you engaged on some certificate of need laws, and so maybe talk a little bit about just briefly what certificate of need is and what the issue was.
Yeah. So certificate of need, it's a fascinating topic, and it's not well known, right? Your average person isn't going to have heard about this in the past, although the listeners on this show are probably a little smarter than most folks, so they're probably well versed on it.
Yep,
but
definitely.
Yeah, but just to be safe, certificate of need comes down to the fact, and it's framed differently in different states, but originally comes from a federal mandate, right? The federal government put out in the 1970s that, hey, this is a really good idea if for all of our hospitals, nursing homes, what have you, if we have some type of mechanism that goes into place before a new hospital or nursing home is built, where essentially you're asking your competitors, your soon-to-be competitors, is it okay if I build? It's a lot like McDonald's going to Burger King and saying, hey, I'm going to put a McDonald's across the street. You cool with that? Of course, the answer is no, right? Every time it's no. And so we dug into the data. Now, granted, over time, people have wisened up as far as how bad certificate of need laws are. In fact, if you're in a state with certificate of need laws that are currently in place, you need to recognize the fact that they're actually worse than the federal government, because the federal government repealed their certificate of need laws uh, dozens of years ago. That's how ineffective and bad it actually was. So in the 90s, the state of Wyoming, in the 1990s, the state of Wyoming got rid of most of its certificate of need laws. It left in place nursing homes. In fact, most states that claim that certificate of need laws have been repealed, most of them still have nursing homes in place. And so that's what we decided to go after this year, was specifically to red Wyoming statutes completely of any and all certificate of need. So we were able to go after that. We were able to find some great data that showed just in the last couple of years, 18 new nursing homes would have been built in the Cowboy State, but for certificate of need laws blocked the majority of those by a wide margin. And so
Wow.
we were able to demonstrate that as, hey, like, listen, guys, I mean, this is clearly a barrier to economic success. It's clearly a barrier to business. And some folks would argue back, well, how do we even know if they're going to be successful? Well, that's not for the government to decide. The market is what's going to decide that situation. And so we were able to get that passed. It actually, a lot of people don't know this, David. Wyoming certificate of need repeal actually died once this session. It died over in the Senate Health Committee right off the get-go. It was our first committee. Died on a vote of 2-3. And so we scrambled very quickly, ran down the hall to the House side, found a sponsor, and rammed it through there. When it came back over to the Senate, we chose to make a recommendation as far as what committee it goes to. So we didn't end up back in the same committee that was voting essentially anti-capitalism. So we were able to get in the law. The governor signed it into law, and that's actually the one law that we didn't have to apply any pressure on the governor on. He was great on it.
Man, that's great. So now we have our healthcare win. So huge education win, huge fiscal economic win in the REINS Act, and a big, with con repeal, big win in the healthcare space. I mean, any AFP team doing, one or two of those, it's a big thing for the year, but you and your team accomplished all of those. How do you think that is going to make a difference for the residents of Wyoming? Because at the end of the day, it's nice to pass good policy, but at the end of the day, we want to help people live better lives, have more freedom, overcome obstacles, keep more of their money.
Yeah. Well, I think between the REINS Act and the education choice win, I mean, both are transformative for generations. I'm excited for the opportunity for my kids someday when they have children, they'll have that choice, right? My kids are pretty well locked in, and thankfully we've got a good public school up in my neck of the woods. However, there is no choice here. There's no opportunity to explore those different options. So I'm super excited for my kids' kids to be able to run the ball on that and make that choice for themselves. We've talked about this before, David. The best decision makers in education isn't some school board member or a superintendent. It's the parents. And by putting that power in their hands, it's really transformative and it's super exciting. And then on the REINS Act side, to be able to hold your government accountable right off the get-go, to not have to wait years and hope that somebody will listen to you at some agency where they're all, I mean, they're not elected. right? So how do you
Right.
hold somebody accountable that's not elected? Especially right now, in the prior situation, prior to that legislation passing, the governor's term limited. He's out. He's a lame duck. So who do you hold accountable in this situation? And now we can hold our legislature accountable year round, year after year without flinching. And so that's transformative by itself. So it's really exciting. It's a big win for the state. And then on top of that, to build on what we did this year, the next year, my hope is that there's a lot of folks in the legislature and a lot of folks across the state that do support big government, that they're nervous and worried about what Americans for Prosperity is going to do next in the Cowboy State, because we're not slowing down. We're not even going to take a rest.
Are you prepared to preview any of the priorities for next year?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited about judicial reform. One of the aspects that happened at the same time in the legislature when we were passing education choice is the state lost a pretty major lawsuit from the teachers union here in the state of Wyoming. And now the state is mandated that every school has to have an SRO. I know that probably sounds crazy to some folks that live in major populations, but we've got schoolhouses with 10 kids in them, 10 kids
Wow.
and one teacher. And all of a sudden, the state is now on the hook to pay for a full-time police officer to be in that one school of 10 kids. And certainly we're not saying, kids aren't not important, but what we are saying is that there should be some fiscal restraint when it comes to our spending limits. And the state of Wyoming does rank very high as far as money spent per student. So that is a major concern. And one of the biggest things that we can do about that is judiciary reform, pardon me. And what that looks like is the state of Wyoming is under what's called the Missouri Plan. The Missouri Plan came about when states were first building out their constitutions. How are we going to have Supreme Courts in each state? What does that look like? And one of the more popular plans out there is the Missouri Plan, which also includes almost no checks and balances. And so we're excited about helping to put those checks and balances in place. One of the biggest things I think we could do is just something small and easy: Senate confirmation of the Supreme Court. It's crazy that that's not even a thing, but it's not a thing in Wyoming. Yeah,
Imagine that.
Yeah, so we're excited about that. We're also going to do some work on AI regulation. Americans for Prosperity is never big on new regulation, and we certainly don't want to stand in front of that or endorse or even be part of anything like that. But there are regulations that are coming down the hill where folks think that they need to regulate something for the sake of regulation. It's like cancer. It's growth for the sake of growth. It's never a good thing. And so on the AI regulation front, we're going to be standing in the way of unnecessary and burdensome regulations. And then, we've got some other fun stuff we're looking at in the regulatory front in regards to licensure, getting rid of some of those onerous pieces of licensure that are in place. As an example, we have a license in the state of Wyoming for, I believe it's an electronics tech. There are 2 people in the whole state of Wyoming that are licensed under this one license. It's kind of ridiculous. So we're going to be looking at removing some of those license pieces of the license like that. Might only affect 2 people, where they're just going to have to. They're probably actually not going to be affected at all. They're just going to stay right at work because nobody's looking at a license that only 2 people hold.
Well, it seems like, freedom is on the march in the Cowboy State. Residents of Wyoming are getting more and more, they're kind of being unleashed and, enjoying more and more freedom, keeping more and more of their money. And I think that's awesome. I think, it's such a unique state, even though it's the smallest population. I think it is a state that kind of captures the imagination of Americans because it is the Cowboy State.
Right.
If people met Tyler in person, you'd know Tyler's a rancher. Truly, is a rancher and is a real cowboy and lives into that, but is also leading our efforts there. It's been so cool from my standpoint to be able to watch the growth that you've catalyzed there with our Wyoming state chapter, to see like the grassroots muscle you've built and how that translates into real wins that are really going to benefit, the people of Wyoming. It's pretty darn cool, man.
I'm so glad you brought that up, David, because honestly, I really lucked out with AFP, with Americans for Prosperity, because how we each operate our own chapters and how we run the ball. Americans for Prosperity lets us kind of own our own business, and being part of that, I've really tested those boundaries and those lines as far as testing how far I could go, and I haven't been told whoa yet. Nobody's pulled rein on me. They basically just said, go find liberty, go find freedom. And I'm only happy to. I mean, this is something that I did on my own as an activist for a lot of years. And then I got elected to the Wyoming legislature, and I was able to do it on behalf of my constituents. And now I'm able to do it on behalf of all of the state of Wyoming, and Americans for Prosperity makes that happen. And it's been a wild ride. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, it's been fun. It's fun for me. I've been with AFP for almost 14 years, and to see like how it's evolved. But the fact that we keep attracting even more and more talent and more talented people to lead these efforts, like you in Wyoming, and wouldn't be doing much of anything in Wyoming if it wasn't for great leadership like you, Tyler. So it's pretty cool, and I'm excited to kind of keep watching like your development, your chapter's development, the cool things that that you guys accomplish in Wyoming. I mean, it can be a little laboratory for freedom at the state level, and I think it's pretty exciting.
No, that's right. That's right. And we are working on several pieces right now that our hope is will be model legislation in the future, experimenting in that Liberty laboratory. It's an exciting time, and it's a lot of fun to be involved with.
Nice. Well, and you're the cowboy mad scientist in that Liberty laboratory of Wyoming, so I'm pretty excited.
That's right.
Well, Tyler, thanks so much for joining us, man, and talking about Wyoming. It's super inspiring. I'm excited to watch what happens.
Yeah, thanks, David. I super appreciate the opportunity. It's always a pleasure coming on your podcast and being able to talk about something that I'm so passionate about and you're so passionate about, and that's liberty in our lifetime and making sure the next generation gets it.
Yeah. Amen, brother. That's great. Well, folks, if you like this episode and would like to stay connected with the podcast, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, as well as follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.